What's more important, offense or defense? I'm Tony, welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
Do what I do best, can't rush in like a roulette. You can't name a better duet. Don't ask questions, trying to figure out what sound. Don't worry about what next, just know we got now.
I was recently asked by a younger player what I think they should focus on more, offense or defense. Now, while this is probably an easy, obvious answer to most of us, right? Remember, this is coming from somebody who's just beginning and wants to get started to become the best player they can be. Even if the answer is kind of obvious, right, it doesn't mean it's not important. So today, let's focus on what's more important, right? Should you become a more offensive player? Is that more important? Should you do it first? Or should you focus on defense and let that be the staple of your game? So yes, the obvious and I think unfortunate answer is offense is more important than defense. I only say unfortunate because it's not like I have anything against offense. It's just that it's not like offense being more important is built into basketball by default. Meaning, like, when Dr. Naismith was inventing basketball, he didn't declare or intend that offense should be more important than defense. So meaning, like, mechanically, strategically, offense by default is not more important than defense. What actually makes it more important is how we view it as a society. So meaning, like, current day society, what we value in terms of, you know, flashiness and money. Like, what brings in the money is the flashiness and the entertainment of it all. So people don't really look at defense as being entertaining, thus it doesn't get the glory that offense usually gets. So really the answer to this question is more societal than it is actually basketball related. But because, you know, you can't really influence all that much, you know, how society sees the game and whether offense is better than defense or more important, then you can only kind of work what you're dealt with. So yes, offense is more important to our society than defense. That being the case, I have 3 tips or 3 pieces of advice that I would give to young players when they're trying to decide, okay, how am I gonna go about approaching being an offensive player? First is another obvious answer, which is you need to be sufficient offensively. And I choose that word sufficient carefully because I'm not saying great, I'm not saying amazing, right? You just have to be sufficient. What I mean by sufficient is, you know, if you're open, you got to be able to score, meaning you have to be respectable, meaning defense just can't leave you open for open jump shots and just disrespect you and be like, well, just leave them open because you can't make that shot anyway. You don't have to be a great, amazing, out of this world offensive player. You just can't be able to be disrespected by the defense. So just as a baseline, you got to be a sufficient offensive player. Number 2 is you have to get to a point where you feel as though you are confident as an offensive player, and confident to the point where you feel as though you've earned the confidence that whatever situation, circumstance you find yourself out here offensively, right, no matter how daunting it may seem, right, you have the real earned confidence, not arrogance, but earned confidence that you will be able to figure out how to score in any given situation. It's very important, I feel, to put the emphasis on you not being arrogant, right? You not being overconfident, right? It has to be real. You have to really have a real earned confidence that I can figure out how to score in whatever situation. And you feel that way because you put in your work, you put in your repetitions and your time, you've put in the experience, right? You've got jammed up in multiple kind of situations out here, right? You've made mistakes, now you've learned from them, and you've gone through the process of knowing what to do better and how to do better next time you find yourself in similar situations. And once you have that confidence, the players around you, especially the more experienced players, they'll just be able to tell, right? Because they've already gone through that process themselves. They know what it's like, they know what it feels like. They will be able to tell that you have that experience, and you'll just naturally get that sort of respect from them. Third is, once you get to that confidence level, it's about at that same time where it's necessary for you to start to figure out and learn how to then make whatever offensive possession that you find yourself in, how to get the most and best out of your teammates offensively as well. Because the reality is that no matter how good you are at offense, right, how proficient you find yourself being, there's always going to be somebody that's going to be better than you. So if they're as good as you or better, right, it only benefits you to be able to understand how to take advantage of whatever offensive situation you find yourself in. So there's going to be plenty of circumstances where it's better for them to try to score than for you to try to score. But the question is, do you recognize and are you aware of those situations? Can you differentiate between it's better for you to score in a certain situation, or is it better for your teammate to score in a certain situation? Because don't forget, this is a team game, right? And so when you're looking to sort of win games, like you'll get to a level out here eventually, right, where you'll understand how to score and you'll understand how to win, right? Because once you understand how to score individually for yourself, you'll also understand, okay, well, if that's how I score and that's how scoring works in general, well then that's how it works for the other players around you as well. And then you'll start to understand and you'll start to become aware of situations where it's like, okay, if this player in this situation does this offensively, then he'll be able to score, because if I were in that situation, I would be able to do that same thing and score as well. The more you're able to do that, the better you're able to do that, the more you'll stop thinking about how you're going to win a game, and it'll become more about how you can sort of dominate that game and dominate games after game after game, because you have such a good offensive awareness. And you can do all of that even while just being a sufficient offensive player yourself. So now that we've gone over offense, now let's talk about the value of defense, because just because, offense is objectively more important than defense doesn't mean that defense loses value because of it. So let's talk about now what you can do defensively to stand out here as a player. And standing out is exactly what we're trying to do defensively. Because think about it, if the spotlight in basketball is almost exclusively on offense, right, then that means there's a huge, large opportunity over here on defense for whoever's willing to put in the work. See, well, it's all good that the spotlight is on offense. The problem with that is that spotlight is crowded, right? Because everybody knows and understands that's where all the, fame and fortune is. It's on the offensive end, right? So, but because everybody knows that, now everybody's crowding into that spotlight, meaning that even if you're a really good offensive player, how are you going to stand out from that crowded spotlight? And that's one of the things that I sort of learned and taught myself and noticed early on as a player myself, which is like, okay, if all the attention is over here, why isn't that this huge red flag to all the players? Like, there's all this, empty opportunity over here. So therefore, what I would recommend for younger players to do is like, okay, everybody's looking over here. That leaves opportunity over here for you to draw some of that spotlight over here and have it be almost exclusively on you. And as I say time after time on this channel, the great thing about defense is it is not talent based, right? The players that are going to stand out offensively, right, are the players that are offensively talented. That's just the way it works. Like, you can't, there's no overcoming talent. There's no outworking talent. If somebody's just way more talented than you offensively, then that's just the way it's gonna be. You can be a really good offensive player, work really hard at it, and come across someone who is not quite as good as you, who doesn't quite work as hard as you on offense, but if they're just more talented than you, they're just gonna stick out and play better offensively than you. Defensively, however, it doesn't really work that way, because defense is a choice. Yes, there can be talented defensive players. However, I would make the argument that there are players who may be talented defensively, but choose not to use that talent. That's why all of this space exists over here defensively and why it's all void. The reason they choose not to use that defensive talent that they may have is because defense is hard. Real defense is hard. It is physically draining, and because all of the spotlight is on offense, right? People want to save their bodies, their energies for offense. They don't want to expel it on defense. They want to save themselves for the glory that is offense. So what I say is, unless you're an amazing offensive player, right? And unless you're one of those players that can stand out because you do have the offensive talent, if you're just like a decent to good offensive player, why not start to focus more on defense where you can stand out? Now understand, first of all, defense is going to be demanding of your body, right? If you've never really played real true hard defense before, you're gonna get exhausted pretty quickly. Because when I say play defense, what I mean is every possession, every loose ball. You can't be sort of what most, here's the deal. You can't fit in, you have to fit out. You have to stand out. The way you do that is you have to play every possession, every loose ball hard. Because what most of these offensive players over here do, right? They pick and choose when they want to play defense. For example, a lot of offensive players, right? They don't want to be embarrassed. So when they're on defense, if the man they're guarding has the ball, they'll try to make it look like they're playing defense, right? Because they want to look good. They don't really know how to play defense. They're not really committed to playing defense, but because they don't have a choice, because the man that they're guarding has the ball, now they're gonna pretend to get down and play defense and like, oh, now they're serious, right? When in every other possession, unless they're guarding the ball, they're not even really paying attention. All they're thinking about is what are they gonna do when they get back on offense. Or maybe if it's like the end game situation, right, where it's point game, the next point that the other team scores is going to end the game, right? Now, okay, now they'll get down and they'll play defense, and now it's time to, play hard, strong defense at the end game situations. That's what most offensive players do, because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what makes you look good, right? When you play defense, when you're supposed to play defense. But when you're trying to stand out defensively, when you're a real defensive player, right? You play defense on every possession, on every loose ball situation. On defense, you're always ready to sprint after a unforeseeable, steal or loose ball or rebound situation. Like, you're always willing to sprint. You're always ready to sprint. You're always, you're looking for every opportunity to be able to get a turnover. And every time your man has the ball, you're in a deep, solid defensive stance. Not just like in an end game situation. No, every time the person you're guarding has the ball, you are in a solid textbook defensive stance, trying actively to make him turn over the basketball in one form or another. And when you're playing defense off the ball, you're also looking for the exact same thing. You're looking for turnover opportunities constantly, and you're doing that at whatever energy cost it may come. Like if you have to sprint into a passing lane to try to steal a pass, right? That's what you're gonna do if you've determined, number one, like it's a good opportunity for you to do so, meaning like you're not just throwing yourself into a passing lane and then leaving your man open, with unabandoned regard, right? You're doing it in a smart way, like because you have the intelligence and the experience that tell you like, okay, this is a good opportunity to sprint into that passing lane. And sometimes you may not get the steal, but maybe you tip the ball away, whatever it may be, right? You are going to put out whatever energy is necessary for you to try to get a turnover. So the more consistent you are defensively, meaning play after play, loose ball after loose ball, rebound after rebound, the more you commit to that, the more consistent you are, the more you're going to stand out, because other players just either they can't do it because they just don't have the conditioning to do it, or they're just going to not choose to do that because it's just too difficult. So if you're just an average offensive player, but you're still trying to figure out how you're going to draw positive attention to yourself from the players around you, commit to defense and understand it's going to come at an energy cost, but it's going to help you to stand out regardless, because when you're putting in the effort that no one else is, right, no one can deny that action, right? People can say, yes, I am a defensive specialist, right? Defense is what I do. Well, do they have the actions to back that up or not? It's one thing to pose as a defender when your player has the ball or when it's the end game situation, right? Or it's one thing to say I'm a defensive specialist and not really put in defensive work. But when you are playing hard, strong, smart defense play after play, that action cannot be denied. A sad reality of if you choose to be a defensive player more so than an offensive player, like if that's where you choose to put the brunt of your energy as a player, that spotlight is always going to sort of remain on offense, right? You're never really going to be able to steal away the spotlight that offensive players have, especially when you're talking about outdoor recreational basketball, because the majority of players that are out here are just sort of casual players, meaning they don't take the game all that serious, and part of that means they don't really understand the game all that deep as well. So they are always going to value offense way more than defense. That's why you need to be smart, right? And you need to not play for their adoration, right? You need to play basketball in a way that makes sense to you, that accomplish the goals that you are trying to achieve for yourself. For me, that means I want to be the best basketball player I can be. And for me, part of that definition means I want to be as well-rounded as possible. So I have as few weaknesses as possible, and those weaknesses are as unnoticeable as possible. And if you're like me and you're just sort of mediocre when it comes to offense, then feel free to put that attention on how you play defensively. If you expend yourself, from an energy standpoint, as much as you possibly can on offense, game after game, day, month, week, month, year after year, trying to be the best offensive player you can be, putting out all that energy, and at the end of the day, the reality is that you're just kind of an average offensive player. Save that energy that you're putting out on offense, right? Still be a good, decent, sufficient offensive player, but instead of going over the top energetically on offense, take a lot of that energy and start putting it on the defensive end, because now you're going to stand out defensively because you're doing something no other player out here wants to do because of how hard it is, and you're also rounding out yourself and your game as a basketball player. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, if you found it helpful, if you think it's going to help you decide, okay, how are you going to approach the game in generalities in terms of offense versus defense, then please subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know down in the comments, what do you think is more important, offense or defense, and why? Because to me, I always knew that I was not a great offensive player. I knew it just wasn't a talent set of mine, that I just didn't have that. So I decided to go the defensive route, right? That's where I want to be well-rounded as a player. How does that work for you? Let me know down in the comments. But before you comment, make sure you hit that thanks button down below, because when you hit that thanks button, it highlights whatever comment you make, making your comment stand out from everybody else's. Also, that thanks button directly supports the channel, so for anybody that does hit that thanks button, know I genuinely appreciate it. As always, like, share, comment, hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel, and until then, I'll see you guys next week.
Don't be shy, better know how we do. What's next is what's now, that's the way that I move. I put